So welcome to another edition to Cheers to Careers. We are fortunate to have J School grad Dylan Schoonover today. He's the Chief Marketing Officer at Strategic Wealth Designers. Welcome, Dylan.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Let me come on. I'm excited.
And Dylan is based out of Colorado right now. First of all, how did you first connect with KU? I mean, I thought I saw where you're super involved on campus. I mean, what was it about KU that attracted you to the campus?
I had the fortunate opportunity to grow up in the state of Kansas, and to me, Kansas was just legendary, from its basketball program to what the campus felt like when you walked on it as a kid. And I just knew that I always wanted to go to the University of Kansas. And when I got in high school, I was able to take a course on broadcasting and journalism, and I got to be in front of the camera and behind the camera and kind of just fell in love with it. Ultimately got a job working for a local TV station, and knew when I went to the University of Kansas that I wanted to be in the journalism program.
And you mentioned your interest in broadcasting. I know career-wise, that's kind of how you got your start, and then you transitioned to marketing. Was that a natural transition, or was that something you always had planned when you did graduate from KU?
Sure. So I've always kind of looked at the world and said, where is a hole and how do you fill it? And so I had internships at the University of Kansas at radio stations in Kansas City, and we interviewed these famous musicians, but it was all done through radio. And I thought to myself, like, when I go to the University of Kansas, I want to focus on video. And so I got to follow the KU Jayhawks around and cover NCAA tournaments while I was there. I got to work with Malcolm with the Kansan and do different articles, and I got that experience. But I always thought that when I got out and I went into television, there was kind of a hole for where people weren't always featuring some of the radio components on air. And so I eventually got to start my own TV show, and I interviewed famous musicians, and I got to go travel the country and do that. And so it really kind of blossomed at KU with my ideas, and then I got to take that and apply it in real life, which was exciting.
Speaking of musicians, was there that one interview that you haven't forgotten? I mean, did you interview some well-known people?
Yeah, so there's multiple ones for different reasons. Mac Miller, I interviewed him. He was memorable for a few reasons. One, unfortunately, he has now passed away, and so I think back to the time when I spent with him. Also, I don't know if I can say this on air, but he was a little inebriated during the conversation, so that was a unique challenge as a journalist, trying to talk to somebody who wasn't, fully present. And then also I think about people who are just absolutely amazing, like Joe Nichols, a country artist who literally would have given you the shirt off his back. He was so kind, so humble, even though he was so successful. So, and then there's a lot of other scary stories and weird stories, but we won't share all of those from tour buses.
So making that transition to broadcasting and marketing, I mean, was that pretty natural for you? I mean, do those two work well together?
Sure. So I was fortunate that I got recruited. So sometimes I would give all students the advice of, you never know how a relationship is going to spawn something else. And so, I always thought that I should treat every client I had, every person I worked with, really well, because I wasn't thinking of it as being a potential job opportunity somewhere down the line. But the last 3 positions I've had, I've been recruited for those roles. And so I was recruited to be a director of marketing from when I was working in broadcast, because it was a client that I was actually working for, and they said, "Hey, you've done a really great job for us. I want you to come and work for us." And I had never really considered it before, but everything kind of lined up. And then from there, I moved to Denver, and then from Denver, I got recruited to go work in Virginia for someone else I had done some things for. So as a student, don't be afraid to make connections with people, because a lot of times those will take you far in your career.
Yeah, great advice. I teach a class in professional development, and that's definitely a point we try to stress. And I believe I've seen you've been in the finance industry for the past 5 years.
Yeah.
Did you learn as you go, or have you always had some pretty strong financial skills?
So I wouldn't say I had a lot of financial skills at all when I was younger, but I would say that I had marketing skills, and I had savvy, and I had hustle. And so I really believe that you can market anything. Like, if you can give me anything, like, I can find a way to market it. And so that was kind of the nature of what I was doing. It was that I had kind of a unique niche of how to get people attracted to something. And so they wanted me to come do that for their financial services company. And when I got there, sometimes you think, like, can I measure up? People have like imposter syndrome, like, oh my gosh, can I do this? And then you get there and you realize, wait a minute, like, I've got way more tricks in the bag than these people are even expecting. And so you feel really good because you're doing really well for them. And then you go to the next place and it's kind of the same thing. So don't underestimate your skills, and don't be afraid that just because your major says one thing, that you can't expand that into something else. And so, one of my things I pride myself on from a marketing standpoint is unmatched experiences. Like, I will pay for things out of my own pocket for my team to do, because I want to galvanize those relationships from, randomly one day showing up at the office and everybody going skydiving out of a plane and they had no idea before it, to, taking the whole marketing team and flying them to Colorado and putting them up in a mansion on the side of Copper Mountain just to spend a weekend together, to really build those relationships. Because I've found that if you build relationships with people, the success of the company is going to go a lot farther, a lot faster.
Yeah, great point. So what has been the past year been like for you professionally? I know with the pandemic since March of 2020, it's been crazy for everybody. Did you have to make a lot of adjustments, or has it been pretty much the same thing you were doing before March of 2020?
Sure. So it's been a great opportunity to reinvent ourselves, and you never know really what you're capable until you're faced with adversity. At least that's how I feel. I feel that you learn a lot of things about yourself when you're dealing with adversity. And so we work with a demographic who is very wealthy, but they're older. And so we would work with people face to face. And that was not something that they were comfortable doing during the pandemic. We were considered an essential business, so we stayed open and we operated, but it was different. We had to transition to online like we're doing right now, talking via Zoom. Some of the other things we thought about is, how do we market to people? How do we get people's attention in a non-traditional way for financial services? So Steve, you probably don't think of a cooking show when you think of financial services, but that's what we created. We created a cooking show from scratch with a financial advisor who was a former executive chef. We put it on YouTube. We built a YouTube following. And then all of a sudden we would put like a 2-minute piece on finances in there as he's cooking, say, Chilean sea bass or something. And a person who has now gone to YouTube to search for sea bass, all of a sudden sees a financial component in that video, contacts us, and ends up becoming a client, all because they were looking for a recipe of something to cook that night. So just have to think of different ways, things that people wouldn't think about, and say, what is possible? Because every student, every person should be asking themselves each day, what is possible? And also making the pandemic what I like to call a what if scenario that's a positive. What if can be a positive, and that's what we started brainstorming.
Yeah, great tips. Yeah, I never would have made that connection with the cooking show for sure. So before March 2020, what was a typical day, typical week like for a chief marketing officer?
Sure. So I have the fortunate opportunity to be able to lead all of a marketing department at our company, and we have offices in Cincinnati and Indianapolis, Denver, spread out across the country. We're opening one in Raleigh. I oversee expansion of where we go in our new markets, and so that's really great and it's exciting. I also work with our events team. We do about 50 to 60 events a month prior to the pandemic that were in person, ranging from 50 people a night to 500 people a night. So we do a lot of live events, a lot of experience-based events, because people pay for experiences. Like if I could tell any student anything that they don't already know, maybe they do already know this, but people will pay for experiences and they love experiences. So when you can give them not just knowledge, not just information, but give them an experience, that's something to focus on. And so for us, we were constantly working on how can we give them a new experience, take them to a Cirque du Soleil show, casino night on top of a really high up building with a beautiful sunset looking downtown like Kansas City or Indianapolis, places like that. I don't want to say that there's a day to day because there's so much going on, but it definitely looked different than it did now from a face-to-face standpoint, that is.
I know you mentioned multiple offices across multiple cities and multiple states. How do you keep everything under control? How do you manage that process?
Well, you hire great people. So I am very, very picky about who we bring in and how our culture runs, because we don't, for lack of a better term, we don't carry any fat. We don't have extra employees just there just to do stuff. We want to make sure that everybody has a purpose. Everybody shows up and they can tell you every day, like what value they're bringing to the company. And so we get really, really picky about who we hire. We actually use a system called a Colby, which is a scoring mechanism that it's a personality test. There's a lot of them out there, but we specifically like this unit because we look at it and we compare it against the other 4 people that they would be working the most with. And it gives you scoring. And what it says is, if that person scores 4 or more apart in the different categories and the people they'd be working around, they're probably not going to be a good fit. They might be a great person, but how they get the things and how the people on the team get the things probably won't mesh very well. So one of the things we do is we vet people really hard, because it's easy to keep things together when everybody's on the same page.
And you kind of touched on this earlier. I mean, this past year has kind of given organizations a chance to kind of reboot and reevaluate. What are kind of your key takeaways from this past year? I mean, are you going to see more remote office settings, hybrid? I mean, do you have any insight on, when things kind of return to normal, what is kind of be that office structure going to be like?
Yeah, so I think you're going to see kind of a blended approach. Certainly you have areas that are significantly hurt. A lot of our friends in the event space, because we did so many events, we did things with like Live Nation and AEG in the concert space, like so many people have been laid off that we know. And it's actually, we've seen a lot of people reevaluate what they want in a position because certainty is so important to people. And some people just don't have certainty right now because of what was affected from how COVID affected them. And so that's been really sad. We've seen a lot of great people being laid off. Like I said, we haven't had to have that situation unfold in our offices, and we're thankful for that. But it has changed how we think about things, and it changes how we hire too. We have a retirement planning course that we teach on campuses, not at the University of Kansas yet, we probably should, but we teach that at Duke and University of Louisville and University of Colorado, several places across the country. And we're expanding that to a completely digital platform where people don't actually have to come to the campus because some campuses still aren't considered like open yet. And so it's been something that's been really good. But continually reinventing yourself and continually learning and growing, because there's no limit to what you can do unless you limit yourself.
I know a lot of students and graduates salary is always high on their mind about what they're looking for in a job, but can you talk about other things than salary? Like a work-life balance. I know to me, when I first started, I was thinking, just get career started, but then once you have a family, you start thinking about how you balance everything. How do you personally kind of handle your work-life balance and have some fun along the way?
So unfortunately, I saw that, I thought about this question, and I'm not the best person to give advice on work-life balance, not because I don't understand it, but because I love to work. And so one thing I would say is yes, money is important to a degree, but happiness is more important. And happiness doesn't always correlate to money. Oftentimes, you can have very, very wealthy people. I've met so many wealthy people who are not happy. And so that is not the sole determinant of what you're doing. So you have to do something that gets you up in the morning and gets you excited, because I absolutely love what I do and our team loves what they do. If you asked any of the people that work for me and they came on here and I wasn't around, what do you like about your position? They could go on and on and on. And that is a motivating factor that it goes far beyond money. And the reason people leave their job is because they aren't happy. It's usually not because of what they're making. One of my favorite strategies is to go out on LinkedIn and actually recruit people directly of who I want. They're at a full-time job, but I found the best way to find people is to actually recruit them and kind of give them insight into what we offer. Because when they hear what we're doing, their company's not doing that. And so, we do company trips. Our whole company, if we hit a goal, we go on a company trip. We went to Costa Rica 2 years ago. We went to Miami this year. We're going to St. Thomas next year. And it's not an if we're going to do that. It's when we're going to do that, because we know everybody's so motivated that that's going to happen.
Well, you've given some great advice already. But if I had a 2021 graduate sitting next to me, we're 2 months away from graduation, what advice would you have for that graduate that's about to enter the workforce?
Sure. So I would say, number one, know your worth. And I don't mean that from a value standpoint. I mean, what can you bring that's going to separate you in a job interview? I interview people all the time. And number one thing for me in an interview is, does the person have confidence? Like, I had a woman the other day that came in and she was so nervous. She actually got hives on her neck. She was so nervous to be in the interview. And I felt bad, but she couldn't even communicate what she was trying to say when we had her interview questions because she was so nervous. So as you're a graduate, when you're going into things, prep, spend time, because if you just go in and I'm just going to throw my resume out there and just see what sticks, employers hate that. If I call you and you have a good resume and then you go, what was this job? Yeah, I end the interview right there. There's no more phone interview. We are done. So don't apply for things just to see what sticks. Have a purpose, know what the role is, and then be able to communicate your answers with confidence. Feel good about yourself, that you're worth and what you can bring to the table. Because we're looking, for me or any of our team, we're saying, what can separate you? What can you bring to us that the other 100 resumes that we have sitting here that we're going to look through can't? And so be able to communicate that and just be confident in your answers.
Yeah, great advice. Dylan, I truly appreciate your time. I think you've got a cup with you or close by. But hey, I appreciate it. Cheers to your careers, and definitely stay in touch. Thanks, Dylan.
Yeah. Thanks, Steve. We'll see you.